Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, Living Safely with Bears, presented by Brad Josephs. Brad is a naturalist interpreter specializing in bear biology and ecology and has been guiding around the world for Nat Hab since 2005. And today he's joining us from his home in Arkansas. Thanks, Brad. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kendall. Hey everybody, and hi, Lauren and Parker in Houston, Texas. They've been two kids that have been tuning in every Wednesday. Oh, actually, I think every webinar. So I really appreciate that. And hopefully this is more exciting than normal homeschool. And you can learn some stuff. Hi, Barbara McKinnon and other folks that told me they were gonna watch this. Hi, Mom and Dad, maybe. I think they're logged in as well. So, okay, so I'm gonna talk about, been doing lots of bear webinars, and this is just kind of specializing into more specific topics. And so I think it's pretty appropriate for me to explain when I show all these pictures of us sitting around with mothers and cubs and stuff, like what the deal is, when that's appropriate, how we do it, when it's not appropriate, and you know. So I guess I'll kind of start with my addiction of bears started when I was very, very young. But I was actually, the first time I was hiking around in grizzly country was 8 years old. In the Canadian Rockies in Montana. Every summer we would go up there with my folks and my little sister, and I became just obsessed with being in bear country. I love the adrenaline rush. I love the thrill of it, and I just love the possibility of always being able to see bears. That eventually I moved to Montana to go to school for 2 years, and then I moved up to Alaska to go to finish my college. So Alaska is really where the bears and I bonded, and bears became the major focus of my life. And I recently moved down to the Ozarks, and we do have some bears down here too, but still go to Alaska in the summertime to work with bears. So when I first moved to Alaska, I lived in, I worked in Haines, right up here in the northern, southeast panhandle. That's where I got my first up close experiences with brown bears. And I like the big ones, the monsters, and alone, nobody there with me, nobody to teach me, just fishing on rivers and turn around and all of a sudden there's a mom and two cubs standing there. And I just instinctively did the right thing, which is just kind of be submissive, show respect, and let the bear decide what it wanted to do. And some of those moments were so adrenaline filled, but also so intimate, that I really fell truly in love with being around them. And always wanted to work towards their conservation, because I just think that bears, definitely people love them, but there's a side to bears with they're hard to get along with, and they're scary and dangerous and stuff. So, but I understand, you know, ways around it through my experience. But I went to school up in Fairbanks, up in the kind of northeast interior right here. And that's where I went to college at University of Alaska. I got my degree in wildlife biology. And there's a picture of campus at -40. And in the summer, and then I lived in a cabin off in the woods about 40 minutes north of town. But in the summer times, I would work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and as a research technician, and trying to get out into the wildest parts of Alaska. And that's where I got some great hands-on experience and sort of my base of knowledge that I use now as a naturalist guide. But we were studying small mammals, and as you can see, there are all those dead trees in the back. We were how small mammal numbers would come back after forest fires, and the numbers really increase, or productivity increases. That's a whole nother topic. But long story short, as I was around bears all the time, just in the wilderness. They drop us off in the float plane, say, I'll pick you up in 3 weeks, and then they'd fly us somewhere else for 3 weeks, and just in bear country all the time. So I had to, you know, I learned lots of lessons about how to be around bears, and sometimes it wasn't easy. My second job was in the Copper River Delta, the basin actually, in the is it Glen Allen area, Copper Center area, Kenny Lake, Wrangell, St. Elias kind of region. And I had a very, very close call with a mother brown bear who we sort of kind of snuck up on her by accident. We just ran into her in the super thick brush, and I got a bad charge. And I had a gun. They made us carry guns. I could have shot that bear. Most people probably would have, but I just didn't. And she could have gotten me. Even if I'd shot her, she would have gotten me if she wanted to, but she didn't. And again, that sort of bond that I have with bears increased a ton. So then after that, because I had this kind of bear experience, oh, and in that place in the Copper Basin where I had that, the year before, their crew, one of the girls that was on the project, got mauled by a grizzly badly. Just surprised it in the brush. And so one of the reasons I got that job, which is a really good one, it was the highest paying one, was because nobody really wanted to work down there all summer because they never found that bear. It was still out there. So it was scared most people off. Well, it just made me want to do it even more. You know, it's just so yeah, so these are the kind of experiences, and my love of bears, and basically willing to go anywhere to be around the most bears, got me, which is the big golden ticket to my life, was a job with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game at McNeil River State Game Sanctuary. So it's remote. People have to fly out. You have to actually win a lottery in order to get there, and you have to camp out, and then you have to walk 3 miles to this largest concentration of brown bears in the world. And so it's a very limited group of people. People dream their whole life to hopefully get picked on the lottery to win a chance to see this place. And I got to spend all summer and doing bear research, but also learning how to guide people on foot on the ground among the highest concentration of bears in the world. But the biggest ticket was I got to this guy right here. He's like the Jane Goodall, the Diane Fossey of brown bears. And he's the one in the 70s learned how to use the techniques that we use today to sit with bears, be around tons of bears, and communicate with them with body language and build up a trust, and how you can go brown bear viewing like we do today. So it was Larry Allmiller, and then this guy right here. These are old pictures that I took this morning, pictures of prints from my phone. Derek Stoneroff. So definitely two legends of the bear world, and I got to interact with other bear legends such as John Hechtel, who's a famous bear biologist. He would come out, and I got to work with the BBC, and Grant Hildebrand, who's the Alaska bear biologist, Sean Farley. I mean, so this was pretty amazing experience. So I basically got not only was I already totally in love with the bears, but now I had a set of skills that were really going to help me out. My next step was, so the McNeil River State Game Sanctuary is right up here. Just by the way, the Pebble Mine, the industrial port site, is up in this region. So that's why you don't really want to have the Pebble Mine going. But this to the south, all the green, is Katmai National Park. And at the time when I finished up working at McNeil, the bear viewing hadn't really begun yet. It was almost nobody out there, and you weren't allowed to carry guns in the national park. And so people generally didn't want to go walking around where it was illegal to have a gun around all these bears. So that was kind of my ticket. There was a small camp starting up, and called Hallow Bay Camp, and I worked there for several years. And because I had this experience at McNeil River, not only living in a remote camp around bears and how to do that safely, but also guiding, those skills were very much needed. And I got some incredible adventures by not hanging around bears in McNeil that Larry had already been working with for generations. I'm talking about bears that had no experience with people, and then try to build a relationship with them. So I definitely could write a book about all these experiences, but just but it was a camp with no electric fence around it. We didn't have any guns, and there were bears everywhere, and you just learn how to deal with it. And and I had just these amazing memories of like this female here that I named her Ursula. And she was deathly afraid of a group of people when we first started, but I just never pushed her. And slowly, she just sort of started to trust us until finally, whenever I would sit down in the meadow with a group of people, she'd be there. And so that was something that I still can, tear up thinking about building this relationship with his mother, who had these spring cubs. And so, it's pretty awesome stuff. Then I still work with this operation that Nat Hab uses, called Katmai Coastal Bear Tours. And so Nat Hab pretty much basically runs the whole program for the whole summer with these guys. And this is another bear legend, John Rogers, who took me in, really liked my my skill set and my take on how to do the bears respectfully, and started guiding up and down the whole Katmai coast. I mean, talk about a playground of adventure, just uncharted unspoiled, unvisited, unmapped. They're just unbelievable, wild. And it was adventures all day long, every day for years and years and years. But John started out there because he worked on the oil spill cleanup crew with his boats. And so he started being around a lot of bears and realizing that he also realized, hey, these bears actually aren't nearly as dangerous as if you just treat them a certain way. And wow, I bet you a lot of photographers would like coming down here and doing this. And so that industry started. Now, the reason why these bears are so this is the best place to hang out with bears. It is like the world famous best example of where bears and people can get along. And the main reason is they are not hunted and haven't been hunted since previous to the 1980s, but even then almost never. And certain areas of Katmai were even protected as a national monument as early as like 1918, I think. So these bears have never really had any bad experience with people. So that's the main part, is that if you don't abuse bears, if you treat them with respect, then they actually let you get along with them. Now, the other thing that these bears are not that they're just inherently friendly, but I think that these bears, because they have to use like very, very concentrated food source, like a salmon stream, where there can be so much food for so many bears in a small area. These bears are evolved to what I would call having a flexible personal space boundary. So when these bears are not antisocial. I mean, they definitely will get into fights and hurt each other, but they also know how to get along, and they're just more open-minded, I think, about taking on a new thing that might be scary at first and building a trust relationship. With us, it's people, but with them, it's among themselves. And so I think that the bears that are more open-minded do better. And so this is a great population of bears to work with. There used to be salmon streams. There are salmon streams where they concentrate in. They have to get rubbed shoulders. They learn how to get along at a beached whale carcass like this. Like, if there's enough food for tons of bears, why would you waste your energy and get cranky and try to fight? That's just a waste. So the bears that learn how to get along easily do well. And so concentrating in a coastal sedge meadow is where they hang out before the salmon come in. So these high concentration of bears with a flexible personal space. So as we started hanging out with these guys and watching them, yeah, at first it definitely was pretty stressful. I mean, the bears a lot of times would run away from you. Sometimes they would threaten you because they were afraid of you. And then when they lost their fear, you had to teach them, well, you can't actually touch us. This is stuff Larry had taught the McNeil bears, but we had to teach it ourselves. And so I just learned a lot of lessons. But one of the things that I noticed, that what we would do at McNeil River, and I started doing this, and now almost every bear viewing guide does this now, is we sit down. And not because we're lazy and tired, but we're sitting down because I noticed that when bears are trying to get along with each other, they use their body language to say, hey, it's okay, we can graze here together, I'm a reasonable bear. And then what they do is they sit down. So these two females are two mother bears that know each other very well because they grew up together. I think they possibly are sisters. They've each got cubs. Now, normally a bear with cubs will never get near another bear or trust another bear, but this is a special place where these females, just know each other so well. They know that they're not going to hurt each other's cubs. So why not just get along in the same space and let the cubs kind of have a little experience without so much, as they normally do, social distancing. And so that's why these females are sitting down. That's bear body language, meaning, hey, let's just get along together. I'm cool. Are you cool? We're fine. Well, if we do that, I notice it tremendously makes the bears more willing to have us hang out and observe them. So that's kind of what we do. And it's just about like learning the bear body language. It's very simple, but you have to pay attention to it. And it's kind of like bluff charge means I'm mad, and sitting down means I'm cool if you're cool. And so that's kind of it. And so what we do is we go out and we never approach the bears. An experienced guide kind of knows where the bears are going to go and can predict it. And if you get there first and sit down with your group, it all works out great. And then the bears see you sitting and they know what that means. That's their language. You're speaking to them. So that's a pretty cool thing. And you'll notice we're on buckets. A lot of people ask about that. Why? Because they don't break, even if you're heavy, and the legs don't sink into the sand. And they're cheap and pretty much fairly comfortable. So yeah, we just go sit there, and as soon as we sit down, I mean, that female with cubs came up and she's digging clams, and then she just laid down and took a nap right next to us in front of us. It was fantastic. But had we been standing up and milling around, and she wouldn't have done that, she would have just gone somewhere else. So notice how what they're doing here. I'm going to go back to this slide one more time. Like, why are we sitting in the mud and the water? Why aren't we sitting in the dry sand like that smart female is? Well, it's because I'm using is what I call, it's just respect and common sense. What she's doing, she's working up and down these sandbars looking for clams, same as this bear. So why would I want to go sit right in a place where she might want to dig a clam? She will just avoid that area, and that's just being disrespectful. So we never get in their way. And they notice things like that. We just don't have any effect on them. So why should they care that there's an eagle sitting, or or gulls that are kind of milling around on a sandbar, or the clouds in the sky? Those things aren't going to hurt them, and they can't really eat them. So why don't they just ignore them and do their own thing? And that's kind of, when you're dealing with a bear, bears are so smart. Like I said, they're flexible body, personal space, and they're very observant. So really, getting along with bears, it depends on what bears they are. These happen to be easy bears to get along with. But so I can't talk about every single group of bears in the world and how to get along with those. But really, you can kind of use, this is what my rule of three is if you just use knowledge, and so you learn about the bears in your spot. These bears are going to be different from Kodiak bears. It can be different from Glacier, from Yellowstone, from the Arctic, from Arkansas black bears, very different. So you use your knowledge to learn about those bears, what they need, what they do, and so you can understand them if you want to be with them. Then you respect them, doing things like not sitting in the middle of the sandbar. If they're fishing in the stream, I don't stand in the stream, even though they're not going to attack me. That's just disrespectful. Right here, you'll notice this is even more subtle. What they're eating is this really short grass right here, this small stuff. This is a very, it's not grass, this is sedge. It's very highly digestible, and there's a lot of protein in it. Be similar to us eating spinach instead of the long grass. And so they don't eat the true grass, which is growing over here. They feed extensively on this short sedge stuff. Well, if I'm going to sit down and watch these guys, I don't sit right in the middle of the short stuff. That's disrespectful, and it's just wear and tear on their food source. And if you're ever with a group, a bear viewing guide, pull them aside and say, well, the bears are eating this stuff. Shouldn't we sit over there? And they'll think, wow. So that's a big key rule of mine. And they're just little subtle things that the bears will notice. And then using common sense. Just, bears are reasonable animals. They're smart, and they do things for a reason, whatever it is. Get mad, go away, whatever it is. Go look for food where you are. Try to. So if you just use common sense and just figure out what the bear wants and what the bear is going to do, then it's easier to get along with them. So it's just those three things can be applied anywhere. Again, we were sitting up in the stuff the bears do not eat, so we are not in the bear's way. We're sitting down, we're totally cool. We got there first. Bears moved in after us. We didn't approach them. We're not going to move until those bears are gone. And then we will kind of slip away. And then after generations and generations and generations, you have a super special relationship, which can produce. And I think I've probably guided, I estimated it's something like 1,500 to 1,800 people into these things. I've never had anybody hurt by a bear, but 90% of them, if not more, will rank those experiences like this as their greatest wildlife experience in their life. It tops anything in the world. So it's pretty amazing thing, just what we're doing here. So yeah, why should the bears care about us? They don't eat us. They don't look at us as a source of food. They know that we're not going to go steal their stuff. We're not going to hurt them. We're just going to sit there and we're not going to move. So why not? So again, like you can see where I'm sitting in this picture, I'm sitting off the river. So if the bears are fishing in a salmon river like this, I will sit 30 feet back because I'm using common sense and respect. Like the bears are going to be walking up and down the bank. Why would I want to get in their way even if I'm a little bit closer to them? So you really are thinking, if you think about the bears first, above anything else, you know, the way kind of my priorities are, first priority always is safety of my people. And then number two is being respectful to the bears. And then number three is getting quality viewing and photos. And if you do the first, if you respect the bears, then they will actually, the quality will always be better because you're not being annoying, or and then because bears will just generally go away. But a lot of times, you know, I got to really talk a little bit about the female and cub thing. So why everybody knows that bears with cubs is a scary thing. I've talked about it in one of the webinars. I mean, they will fight to the death. Well, you can't do the same thing in all places. But the reason why these mothers with cubs don't care about us, actually I think like us, is because they have built a trust. They know that we aren't going to hurt them. If we were over in Kodiak Island, or a place where people were not as predictable, and places where people would hunt or be disrespectful or scary to bears, then yeah, when the mother saw a scary group of people, she will mostly try to flee the area. But if she didn't feel like she could get away or it was too close, then she'll attack. Well, these guys won't do that. So the bears will size everything in the world up, and that, be it another bear that may not be dangerous or might be dangerous, they'll decide. Maybe they know that bear, like that female I showed you before with the two families. Well, they know. This mother bear is not going to hurt one of my cubs, but she doesn't. That's not what she does. Well, they also know that people don't hurt bears in this place. So that's why it's okay to do it with mothers and cubs here, but you can't just do it other places. And it's just using the respect. I remember this female, she was the only female in the meadow with spring cubs, and this was kind of early in the season. Everybody, I mean, the groups that were out there all wanted to get close to her, and they wanted to get a picture like this so bad, but they just approached her too much, and she just would like drift off, and she didn't feel comfortable. Well, and I'd be out there alone with my group, and I just would give her 200 yards and then sit down. And eventually she just found that to be respectful, I guess. She just eventually came up, and I think that she judged my group as maybe a good group. The baby bears, the young bears need to learn that there are people around there, and then this is how we kind of deal with them. So she kind of, I think, just used us as her first lesson on being around people. And she came right up, super close, laid down, nursed. The cubs got their first up close look at us, and we just remained sitting, and we were quiet and still, and it was just a fantastic moment. And it just moments that I've never had with any other species of animals. That building up these relationships with them. Now, we're not their friends. We're not providing anything for them. We're just another entity out there that they can tell they're so smart. I know that they can feel that we are interested in them, focused on them. But we just respect them so much that they tolerate us being there, even in the most vulnerable positions. Like mothers will never nurse unless they feel super comfortable that nothing's going to sneak up on them, because they're on their back. The cubs are making a really loud purring noise. They can't really see around them, so they have to be out in a spot where they know that they're totally safe. And if they're sitting 30 feet from us, they'll do that because they know we're cool. She trusts us. To have a bear that trusts you and you also trust, well, I'm going to sit here next to potentially the most dangerous animal on the continent or the world. There's a mom, an 800-pound female brown bear with her two tiny cubs, and I'm going to be the guy responsible to make that decision to be there with people that trust me. It's just a beautiful thing. And yes, sometimes the cubs say, well, mom thinks you guys are so fine, I don't know why we can't play with you. And they do go through a period there that they will come up and test our limits and boundaries. And so what do? We don't go anywhere, we don't move. We haven't invaded their space. Well, we also teach them, you can't invade our space. And so whatever distance the guide sets, you pretty much stand up or do some clapping, a little bit of talking. Hey bear, that's too close. You know, make a smacking sound or something like that. And they realize that. And it is really important to set those boundaries in the beginning of the bear's life, so they don't get used to coming up and really scaring people, like trying to sniff them and things. That's not okay. So what we pretty much have is a wonderful, beautiful relationship where humans can hang out, unlike any place in the world, with the most charismatic animal. An animal that you can go back and say, why do we love bears so much? It was the first webinar that I did for the Daily Dose series. Is why are bears so amazing? Well, here's a place where we humans do love them, and so we can hang out, and it really gives the bears a chance to make people happy, and then they fall in a special love of the bears, and then they can become bear advocates. They contribute to the economy, which the whole local area is going to be more in favor of conserving these bears, and we all can learn lessons on how to treat bears in other places that can be applicable. So it is a wonderful thing. When I started guiding down in Katmai, there was no bear viewing economy. It was just like special film crews, a few kind of crazy photographers that I would take out, but it was all very limited. It was impossible for us to fill seasons up or anything. It was, because nobody was like, I'm not going to do that. You must be nuts. Well, slowly the word got out, and then Nat Hab started. But I started out there, and my first season in the Katmai coast was 2000, so that's 21 years ago. The Nat Hab started working out there in 2004 or 5 with me. But check that out, $34 million in sales, and then an added $20 million per season per year. This is from my University of Alaska study. So South Central Alaska bears in the last 20 years has become the real gold. So if you are hanging out any kind of bear country, now don't go out to Katmai and try to do that stuff by yourself. And I wish it would be illegal. There are some campers that try to do it alone and without a guide, and I think they could get hurt if they do something wrong. And I also just believe that they're not acting exactly the same way that the guides who work out there all the time are. So they actually, the guys that go out and try to camp alone, I think are one of the greatest threats to this relationship. Anyway, but what if you're in bear country? What are some of the ways that we can, live in a place? Some of the rules. Well, the first one is if you ever encounter a bear. Now, I can't go into every scenario. I mean, there's going to be a million questions. Like, what happens if I see a black bear? Well, there's what about a polar bear? What about if I see a spectacled bear when I'm in Peru? So there's no I can't go through everything. I could write several books about things like that. But right now I can just say that the number one thing, regardless of what if you ever encounter a bear or a wolf for that matter, the main thing that you don't want to do is act like prey. Prey sees a bear and it runs away, scurries away. If you act like prey, they will chase you and treat you like prey. So that's the main thing. You don't act like you're afraid of them. You don't act like you're something to eat. And because pretty much if anything runs away from a bear, as friendly as that bear might be, I'm sure that if I got up and just started running around the meadow away from the bears, they would chase me. So don't ever act like prey. That's extremely important. This is why so many people get attacked in Alaska when they're running or mountain biking around like the Anchorage Bowl. So let's say that they like to mountain bike at 4 o'clock in the morning because they work some weird shift. And it's daylight anyway in Alaska in the summertime, where you're flying around these trails, and that's when the bears come out that want to avoid people. So you're dealing with mother bears with cubs that don't want to be around people, and when you come flying around silently in a bike, you're going to get hurt. Also running. So you just got to make sure that you're not going too fast and you make lots of noise. And then if you do see a bear, you quit running and you don't act like prey. The other good things to do when you're in bear country is traveling in a group. I think there's never been a group of people ever attacked by bears in history. I think there was one instance where there was some kids in South and up near Denali, and there was like a Knowles course or something, and they were all spread out, and they surprised a bear, and they just scattered, and a couple of them got hurt bad. Also, know the bears in your area. So what the advice that somebody is going to give you for being in the Buffalo River around bears, the black bears of Arkansas, is going to be vastly different from the polar bears in Churchill, from the Katmai bears, from the Kodiak bears, from Yellowstone, from Glacier. So, you need to know what the bears, and you need to learn about each bear where you are. So that's important if you want to coexist peacefully with them. Whenever you're traveling, it's just go slowly and make noise. And if a bear is afraid of you, they will definitely want to leave that area. They will definitely want to leave that area and avoid a confrontation. So if they didn't care about a confrontation because they weren't scared of you, then it's no big deal. But so make noise and let them know you're coming, and then that way you really won't ever actually probably ever see a bear in the wild. And be mindful of your food. So that's how you can really ruin your picnic and ruin a bear forever, is if a bear ever gets use of your food, anything that we like to eat, the bears love it 10 times more. So never let a bear get conditioned to be garbage or bird seed or camping food or coolers full of stuff at a barbecue. That stuff, a bear cannot resist it, and it will go eat. And then every other group of people after that, they're going to come in and be more aggressive, and then it turns into a serious problem bear that'll probably have to be removed. And then again, as I was saying, just always remember the respect. Respect these animals as big predators and use common sense. And what is that bear trying to tell you? It's angry about something. What's it mad about? I can tell. Oh, there's cubs around. Oh, it's mad because there's a food carcass that it's trying to eat and we've disturbed it. Bear's following me. Why? Why? Oh, because I'm trying to get away. I'm actually, like Brad said, acting like prey. I need to stop acting like prey, quit walking away, because it's following me. And then a lot of people always wonder about playing dead. And yes, it just depends. And this is all about knowing the bears. I could go on and on about this stuff for a long time, but playing dead is something good to do if you've been attacked by a bear who believes that you are a threat to them. So if I was to bike around Anchorage at night and I flew into a family of bears and the mother was mad and got on top of me, then what I would do, yes, I would quit fighting and show that she's not a threat anymore. But another thing, if a bear has been following you and following you and following you, and you're walking away and all of a sudden you just drop to the ground and play dead, you're just asking that bear to come up to you. So you got to use common sense and make that choice. But really, if you want to hang around bears and get pictures like I've got, use an experienced guide. It's not something that I can just tell a group of people out there and then they can all just tromp around in the middle of Yellowstone backcountry and be okay all the time. So, all right, so firearms. I do not like firearms for bear protection. I even have a saying, because in Alaska it's so firearm, everybody's got the guns, and I think it's just a cowboy thing. They just feel really tough. I live in a place where I have to carry a gun. Firearms are bad news. So here's a little story, a study that was done by two of the top bear biologists in the world. And then, so they analyzed all these encounters for so long, hundreds and hundreds of encounters. And basically, the data shows that people with guns can get just as hurt if they don't have a gun. The reason is a lot of times people don't know when to shoot a bear. 99.9% of the time, the bear does not have to get shot. There's other ways around it. But when you do try to shoot a bear, you either kill it or it's going to become wounded and 10 times or 100 times more dangerous. So it's not really a good idea to rely on a gun. So anyway, that's just, I never carry guns in bear country, ever. You got to pick one deterrent. You got to choose which deterrent you want. So pepper spray is a great alternative, much more effective than a gun. The bear will encounter this atomized cayenne pepper spray, and it will become disoriented, and it will just be, it's like a wall they hit, and they will just turn around and go away. They can't see anymore. They can't really smell. And they just want to leave, and it's very painful. But it doesn't actually wound the bear and to make them hurt you. So, but you have to consider, do I use pepper spray out in Katmai? No, I don't. I don't actually. I'll show you what I use in a minute. I don't use pepper spray because I have to see where I am. Well, for those specific bears, well, first of all, it's very windy out there, so that makes pepper spray more difficult. Pepper spray is expensive. Like one big canister is like over $50. It can be dangerous if it blows back on you or goes off accidentally. You're gonna be in trouble. It's very painful, and you're gonna be out of commission for a while. So if I was to spray what I thought needed a bear that needed to get sprayed because it was just getting too close, I've never sprayed a bear in my entire life. And we're talking about how many hours I've been around so many bears, never actually used pepper spray. Because I think in Katmai, it's actually overkill. There's other ways to get rid of a bear, to make him leave you alone, that doesn't hurt so bad. But in Yellowstone or Glacier, yeah, I think I probably would carry it. There's certain times where I do have some around, like if I'm camping out for a long time. If I do get a bear that by accident gets into my food stash and will not go away, I might have to, spray it, but I haven't yet. The other thing to remember, most people don't realize this, is pepper spray is actually catnip for a bear. There have been people that said, well, bears don't like pepper spray, so let me just spray my tent and then the bear will never touch it. Well, it's like catnip. I mean, if they get sprayed in the face, then it's like me. I love to eat spicy food, but I don't like to rub it in my eyes. So it's the difference there. But if you spray pepper spray on the ground, or it's leaking, there's something about that smell that just attracts them. So Just be very careful with it if you have it, that you're not like if you test out pepper spray, say at your campsite, and you spray it on the ground to make sure it works, the bears will be much more likely to come over there. And every bear in the whole area will roll and roll and roll around in it. But pepper spray is, like I said, effective. So if you're really scared of it, like if you were going to go into Glacier and there was some dangerous bears around, and you know that they probably would attack you if you got too close, but you wanted to hike in there anyway, pepper spray might be a great thing to do. And the main point is much more effective, safer, and more ethical to use than a firearm. But this is what I use, because when I started out, I didn't like pepper spray for those reasons. So what we use is marine signal flares. It's something that a couple guides and I kind of figured out. This is a flare that you basically have to carry on a boat, that in order for you to signal an aircraft, they can see it from a mile away if you need it. So you know, when you're complying with the Coast Guard on vessels anywhere in Alaska, you have to some of these flares get expired and you have to buy new ones, and you always want to test them out and know how they work. Well, once you try one of these things, you're saying to yourself, wow, this would be awesome for a bear. This would be great for a bear. Now, I wouldn't want to use that necessarily like in Yellowstone in August, because it could be a big fire hazard. That's why I would choose pepper spray over that. So I'm not really worried about fire hazards in Alaska there, where I am working there in the summer, but other places, yeah. And just in case you go fly to Wyoming, to Yellowstone or somewhere, and you have these things, do not ever try to fly with them on a commercial aircraft. It's a federal offense. You got to buy those things when you get there, anywhere that's a marine safety store. I convinced Nat Hab to, this is what all the guides carry these around in Churchill now, and they're in our pockets, because we're going to start carrying shotguns around. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But if I had a bad problem with a bear, this would really work. But what Nat Hab has to do is get them in Winnipeg and then ship them special, like in a special way. I don't know, there's regulations. But anyway, so you have to like fly to Alaska, ask the taxi cab driver, can you take me to a marine safety store? And then you can buy some of these, and they're just like $10 or $11 each. You got to get the right ones, not the ones that you pop in the road that last for like 30 minutes or whatever. So cars, it's got a really small flame. It's not effective. It's hard to detonate, and you don't need something for 30 minutes. What you need is the special marine signal flare, which is 60 seconds of burning time and got about a 12,000 candle power. Okay, Kendall, can you share that?
Okay. Spin this out, pull the cap, turn into the fire monster. Sorry, did that hit you?
No. I know. Back over to you.
Okay, good. So that's what a flare looks like, and you can see why any bear in the world wouldn't want to mess with me when I turn into the fire monster. So that's a great way to get rid of bears, and it's to have bears leave you alone, and very reliable. But other ways things for you guys, especially ones that live in bear country, like even in most of the United States, a lot of the United States have black bears, is something that to help you get along with the bear so you don't feel like you have to get rid of the bear, is don't ever let that bear look at your house as a source of food, because that's always a bad deal. They will eventually probably break into your house to look for more. So bear-proof garbage cans are very, very effective and important. If you're going backpacking or camping in bear country, bear-proof food containers are very, very important. In fact, a lot of places they are mandatory that you use them, like in Katmai. If you go camping in Katmai, you have to have a bear-proof food container. So yeah, they're not super cheap, but it's well worth it. And people that don't want to spend that kind of money, then they're just going to be compromising their own safety and the well-being of the bears in the area. So bear-proof food containers are very, very important. And if you've got, say, bears in your yard, let's say you have a garden, whatever, or you're going camping, you can get very easily now, you can get these electric fences that are fantastically effective for bears. And that's what we use when we're camping among lots of bears in Alaska. And they can be portable and just run on batteries. And, you know, I think this would be about a $130 investment. This is something that I could take backpacking with me and set it up in about 15 minutes. And then I don't have to worry about bears coming into my camp. Or if you have chickens, and there was a mother and 2 cubs outside of Seward, Alaska years ago that were, this guy killed all of the bears, all the mom and the 2 cubs. Why? Because he, even though he was living in a heavy bear country area, he had a chicken coop and he wanted to protect his chickens. And he didn't know what an electric fence was. And so he killed this entire bear family. I mean, come on, you know, have some respect. So they can also be, you know, solar panels. I mean, this is what livestock farmers use for a lot of ways. And so 20 years ago, these were kind of hard to find and people didn't know about them, but now they're very easy. I could order one and have it delivered to my house tomorrow. So yeah, I've camped out a lot in Katmai. And so, it's kind of interesting. You guys that are interested in this stuff, you might want to go to my YouTube channel and just search through my videos, or just search this. This video I have is called the Great Bear Stakeout Base Camp, How to Camp in Grizzly Country. Just search it. It'll come up. It's about an 8-minute video. I don't even have I don't have a copy anymore. I can just show it on YouTube. But basically, it's one of our base camps that we had with the BBC when we were working on a documentary called The Great Bear Stakeout, which is a super awesome documentary, by the way. And so I just basically do a camp tour of how we do it with electric fences, bear-proof food containers, deterrents, and cooking areas, and how we were able to spend a total of 2 months camped in an incredibly dense population of bears with no problems. So we can do it. So where did this guy Timothy Treadwell? Everybody asked me. So many people asked me, what about Treadwell? What happened to him? And a lot of people just say, oh well, he just you know, the bears finally got sick of him. And that's not the reason he got killed. But anyway, if you don't know who he is, and I did know him because when I started guiding out there, he was one of the only people out there, and he was camped out there. And I interacted with him some. So basically, he was a guy that just went off by himself and learned how to hang around the bears safely, just like I did at McNeil River. Learned that, you know, shout at a bear if you want him to leave you alone, and get the bears sort of used to you, and then don't ever let them get your food and all this kind of stuff. And he was able to spend every summer alone for 12 years, and then he would go back to California and teach like kids kind of bear workshops, or and was sort of as a bear conservationist. And but the problem is he lacked a few things from the knowledge, common sense, and the respect issues. He did it for so long. He thought everything was always going to be okay. That's 12 years worth of summers, lots of interactions. Well, the reason why he got killed was because he forgot about one thing or didn't know about it. He had never been out there in the late fall after the salmon have already finished running and the berries were already gone. So what happens is something called hyperphagia. When the fish are there, when the food's there, bears are obsessed with food and they eat, and they're very happy, and they just keep eating until they can get up to what's known as an optimal hibernation weight. And then they won't really want to eat so much anymore. They're fat enough. They have these leptin, the different sort of hormones that kick in to sort of suppress their appetite. And then once that food goes away, then they just get sleepy and go up and hibernate and wake up when the food comes back in the spring. But there's other bears that haven't gotten lucky enough because they're old or something wrong with them, that the food runs out. But there's no, they haven't gotten to their optimal hibernation weight, and they get desperate. So that's why in the only time that he went up there and camped out in actually October, there was a big old male and walked up to his camp. That same bear, I knew that bear. I'd seen him many times before. He was a cranky bear. He's not a bear I would want to be pushing any limits with. Not a bear I would want to be hanging out with. He was an old one, and he wasn't that healthy. He was huge, but he wasn't fat enough, and the food was gone. Well, Treadwell was up there, and Timothy lost. He didn't use any of the other techniques that he used to use. He just quit doing it. He got complacent. He had no electric fence. He had bear-proof food containers, but instead of doing what he should have done, which is keep them like 100 yards from the tent, so that a bear can go investigate the smell, but then realize I can't break into it, because once they lose interest, oh, I can't, it's bear proof, then they forget about it. But if you try to tell the bear to get away from the bear proof container before it's made the decision on its own, then it's the same as just basically ripping a fish out of its mouth. But he had the bear proof food containers right next to his tent. So some night in a storm, the bear came up, smelled it, tried to break into him. Well, it was right next to his tent. So he went out and tried to scare this bear away. Most of the bears probably would have left, but not this big old male. And anyway, that's what happened. So he just pushed every limit that he could push at the wrong time of year, and that's why he finally got killed. So he didn't follow the rules. And unfortunately, as always, this is the bear that killed Treadwell and his girlfriend, and it was killed. I don't know why this National Park Service guy that went in to kill the bear is smiling, but that's as disturbing as anything else. But anyway, that's what happens when you don't follow some of the rules. This relationship breaks, and we lose this amazing resource, and we lose the trust. So you got to be disciplined if you want to live with bears. Now, do I like Treadwell? I knew him. I interacted with him. Mostly he wanted to keep by himself, but I did have some long talks with him, and I respected him because he was a tough guy, and he was living out with bears alone. I know the stuff he had to go through, and especially in the early stages when he's figuring things out. It's intimidating and scary, but he was kind of annoying too. But I mean, he was a bear lover, so of course I liked him a lot more than I like most people. But I was very, very sad when this happened for him. But it was just kind of like, gosh, man, we all told you to be more careful. But the saddest part really is that this sort of relationship that we have with the bears out there is that, as I'm using the Katmai relationship of us hanging out with those bears as kind of a model of how we can coexist with bears in other parts of Alaska and other parts of the world if we use respect and common sense. Where there's a lot of guys that are like, oh, you can't trust a grizzly bear, they're eventually going to eat you. And then when this happened, they're like, see, we told you so. So it really like took 10 steps back on kind of our personal and my personal mission to teach people that bears and people can get along if you treat them a certain way. But now he became a cult legend because of the documentary, which is of his own footage, and it's interesting. It's an interesting story, and then a really, really good book about this whole situation in bears in general by Nick Jans called The Grizzly Maze. So that's what happens when you have somebody that doesn't follow the strict rules. What happens is somebody gets killed, and then the bears get killed, and then everything sort of collapses. That's why we can't have a pebble mine in this place right next to McNeil River, right at the headwaters of Bristol Bay, where all these bears that are migrating through, the bears from Hallow Bay can go up into this area. They will be interacting with not me or a guide or even fishing guides that are good around bears, or Drew Hamilton, or anybody in bear country. You're going to be dealing with these industrial mine workers from who knows where that may or may not follow the rules. When bears in industrial areas never do very well, like in the North Slope, the oil fields, there's all kinds of rules. You can't feed the wildlife, you can't do this, but they don't do that. They drive out and they're on their free time, and they see a bear and they start throwing food to it because they don't know any better and they don't care. They want to get a cell phone video to send to their girlfriend about how this bear came up in their truck. So that's what's going to happen. And it doesn't matter what the mining company or even the government tries to say or do, it will happen. So there will be inevitable conflict. So then the bears and the people will stop trusting each other. The bears will become dangerous. Bears will get killed. And this beautiful relationship that we have of coexisting with the bears and bear viewers, that's a phenomenal asset to our ecosystem, the economy, is gone. Just so that one mining company can basically, I don't know, not even an American company. So this is definitely a battle, and we've dedicated entire webinars to this. And there's also a really great podcast with Drew Hamilton, who's my very good friend, and he is the leader of the Pebble Mine Fight and the president of friendsofmcneilriver.org. So you can go to that website and go visit him on Instagram, Drew H. You can go search Wild and Exposed podcast for podcasts and go down to where you listen to Drew talk about it. So always keep that to remind people. Also, if you want, this has got to be the best sort of bear website as far as bears in general. This is from a very good friend of mine named Sylvia Dolson. And she started this Get Bear Smart Society because she lives in Vancouver area around Whistler, and there's so many bears that, I mean, that just, she realized that this is great to have these bears around. We can live with them, but we gotta have this giant movement in order to learn how to live with bears the right way. And just by teaching people about the garbage, about what to do if you see a bear, and have a, and it basically it's a tremendous success story. So that's a great one to visit. You can go through, and it's just about how to live with bears, not only just in Whistler is only the great example of the success because of Sylvia, but it goes, there's the website's full of all sorts of amazing bear information. You can also always go to my blog site. I got lots of articles about bears. If you're a homeschool kid, you just tell your folks that I said it was good. It's counts as homework. And then my YouTube channel, also just Brad Josephs, or my Instagram, Brad Josephs, just the normal stuff if you want more stuff like this, just bears and other animals. And that is my last slide, Kendall. It's a big, big topic. So I could talk forever about this stuff, but just trying to keep it simple. And I know people don't like to watch stuff for over an hour, and that's as much as I could fit in there. So from questions.
Yeah, fantastic, Brad. I think we've all learned a lot. We do have a lot of questions. First, I'd like to remind everyone that you can submit questions via the question box in your control panel. All right, let's get to it. We have a question here from our friends Lauren and Parker. How common is it for bear cubs from different mothers to play together?
Oh, good question, guys. It's not very common at all. That's why, and it was, you know, it shocks me sometimes to see it, but it's only in this one place where these sisters have kind of grown up together, and they're just really good-natured females that are just around each other all the time, and they've built up a trust together. But no, it would be something that you would never see in Yellowstone or polar bears in Churchill doing like that. So that's why it just shows that there's not really any rules with bears. There's been millions of exceptions. And the way I like to look at it is you're dealing with a very complex animal, like human beings. You can't, there's no psychiatrist that can say, hey, I've been working with people for 25 years, and I'm a great psychiatrist, and so I know what make people tick. I know what people are going to do. I've got rules for human beings. It's impossible. Some people are the nicest people in the world, or dedicate their life to doing great things, and some people are horrible and they kill people. So you just never know with bears is kind of my point, and that's what makes them interesting animals. And I will throw in also that I'm going to attempt to do what I did last week. If you go to my blog, which is alaskabearsandwolves.com, so maybe Monday or Tuesday or something like that, if you just go visit it, I will answer all the questions because we don't have time to answer them all. I did that with my polar bear. You see, this is my recent post, a polar bear webinar. I had so many questions, like tons, that I only answered 3 during the webinar. So I basically took all the questions and I answered them. So if you get frustrated that you ask a question and nobody answers it, just go to my blog site. It can get overwhelming when you do a webinar every day, and these questions are kind of tough. Okay, Kendall, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know people really appreciate that. It's a great resource for folks. What time of year is best to go see the bears in Alaska?
Oh, that's a good question. Anytime that we run trips is great. It just depends on what you want to see. My favorite time is actually before the salmon come in, when they're just in the meadows, because that's when I can sit with the moms and cubs more and watch the cubs play, and it's just mellow. All they need to do is just eat the sedges and go dig clams, and it's among beautiful scenery, and you also get this fantastic mating season behavior that's so fascinating. But obviously, I don't have to explain why it's amazing to come, let's say, starting in late July through August and September to see the bears fishing for salmon. So really, that's what you want to see. All the pictures that I show of the beautiful mothers with the cubs, that's almost all in like June and July. And then the pictures of the bears with the salmon is August, September.
Okay, great. Do bears ever closely approach tourists on your trips, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, they do. They can. They don't do it as much as they used to because all the guides that work out there set really good limits, and that were predictable. Bears know, okay, well, I'm going to get yelled at. So pretty much what we do is we just start out yelling at them and clapping our hands and looking like we're getting upset. And the bears are like, it's like your dog when you yell at it and say no. They know that you're getting mad. The bears know the same thing, and they don't want to find out what happens if you really make us even madder. And what happens if they do, and they don't go away, which has only happened maybe like 5 times in over 20 years, is I will use my flare. And that's it. And then there's a 0 chance a bear is going to mess with me when I have that giant ball of fire in my hand. So that's it. It's pretty simple. But yeah, they do. They're curious. They're curious animals. They want to test out the boundaries, especially young ones.
Yeah, sure. Do bears ever get annoyed with the camera noises when people are taking photos of them?
I've never noticed them too. No. But I do. I get annoyed by it. So I love the mirrorless cameras that make their noise. But no, bears are very. Let me just add a little bit more to that. Bears are incredibly adaptable. So they get used to airplanes flying over and landing on the beach or in the water. I mean, tremendous noise of an airplane flying overhead to bring in some tourists or something that they don't even stop grazing because they're used to it. So they are very good at tuning things out that they know that they figure out are not. It's either something to eat or something that's going to hurt them. Okay.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned not being able to fly with the flares, but can you fly with bear spray?
No, you can't. It's pressurized. So yeah, I can't remember if you can fly commercially, but you can't fly with them in small aircraft or have it in the cabin itself, because if it goes off, it's going to be a disaster. So and I never really fly around with it, so I can't remember if you can fly with it on commercial flights or not. I'll look it up and tell you guys, but it wouldn't be something that would be maybe good to do. I think it's better to buy it on location. Anywhere where you got bears, you can always get it. Bear spray, they sell it wherever you are.
Mm-hmm. I have a little more challenging of a question here for you. Someone wants to understand better the policy of officials finding and killing a bear that has attacked a human. Can you discuss that at all?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what happened with that bear that was very hungry? The reason it attacked Treadwell was because it just tried to take food away from that bear, and that bear was desperately hungry because it hadn't gotten enough for winter. Well, that was the reason for the attack. But once the attack happened, that bear realized, oh, I can actually eat these people, and he ate them. So so then it's just like if you pull up to a bear in Yellowstone in your car and you throw it a donut, then it's gonna, every time a car comes by, it's gonna want to go get that donut. Well, what Treadwell just showed that bear is that you can eat people. So you actually have to take that bear out of the population because it consumed. Now, some bears, when they attack a person, like most brown bear or grizzly attacks, it's mothers with cubs. Like I said, in Anchorage, somebody's running and then all of a sudden he scares the female. If that person does the right thing, the bear knocks the person down. Usually the bear will take 2 or 3 bites and a few swats, and then she'll leave. Okay, I've neutralized that threat. I'm going to take my cubs somewhere else. I won that fight and I want to go away. Those times where the government usually does not kill that bear, they just say, well, the bear's just doing what it's always going to do. There's no reason to kill it. But if bears begin to prey on people, they will have to be taken out of the population.
Okay. Well, that's the last question we have time for today. So I'll hand it back over to you, Brad, for closing comments.
Great. Thanks again, guys. This is kind of fun seeing all these bear fans. So I think we had like 450 today. So yeah, it's just really happy for me to get a lot of these great messages out and see that there's interest for conservation and appreciation of animals and bears and everything else. So once again, Thank you guys. Appreciate it very much, and hang in there. Everything's getting better slowly.
My thanks as well, and be sure to join us tomorrow for our next daily dose, Ocean Conservation in the Galapagos. We did record today's presentation, and we'll get that replay out to you soon. So with that, I'll conclude the webinar. Thanks, Brad. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you guys. Bye, Kendall.